7:37, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Let's have a look at the papers then, shall we? We're joined by Liz Kershaw and Oscar Reddrop, and they've been looking through the papers. What have you come up with, Liz? Something? Oh yes, it's the front page of the Daily Express today.
First of all, can I just say, well done. We've stopped the oil.
Yeah. Do you think it was us?
It was me saying they should be tasered. Yeah. Immediately put out a press release saying calling it all off.
Yeah.
Victory for GBNEWS.
Well, I think.
Well, why not claim the victory if you want to?
Let's just.
Might be pushing it a little bit. I think a little bit.
But you've been looking at this Daily Express lead: tragedy for families if care costs cap is delayed.
Yeah. So Andrew Dilnot, who was the architect of the government's social care cap, which was the latest one, which was...
Now, this is the cap on which, at which you, if you have to go into social care or whatever, into a care home, you'd have to sell the entirety of your house in order to do so first.
Well, the limit was to be set at £86,000. After you'd spent that, you would then be looked after by the state finances. £86,000 is a lot of money, but there's one case here in the article in the Express where the family was spending £60,000 a year to keep the mum in care in a home, suffering from dementia, and the people who are stricken with dementia are the biggest customers of care homes. So although she was not physically unwell, she needed this treatment. Well, dementia is of course a brain condition. If you had cancer, you wouldn't be shoved out into a care home. You'd be treated in an NHS hospital. But because dementia is not an acute condition, it's chronic, it's over time and you deteriorate gradually, you don't get any treatment for it on the NHS. And that's just the crux of the whole matter with the elderly, really, that if you were 50 and you had a certain disease, you'd be in hospital. If you're 80, they just say, oh, well, ta-ta, it's up to you and your family now to cover it. That's the big fundamental issue here. Anyway, if this was scrapped, and it would only save the government £2 billion, which is a small amount compared to the overall national debt, it would be a tragedy, it says Sir Andrew Dilnot. It would make no difference to the public finances, and it would be astonishing. And organisations like Age UK, of which I'm a patron, because of the treatment to my grandparents 20 odd years ago, and the Alzheimer's Society are also attacking the prospect of this cap being dropped. So something, as I've always said, you know, if you don't die prematurely, you're going to get old. So be afraid, be very afraid about what could be coming up in your life.
Oh.
I'm sorry, but that's the prospect.
And actually, I think it is a worry. It's a huge worry for people of my age group, definitely. Yeah. You think about it a lot.
And it filters down to the family members, young family members as well. There's no one who goes kind of unaffected by something like that at all.
No, well, it eats all the inheritance up.
Well, it's not only that, but it's just the worry and the total commitment. It just grinds everybody down. I'm speaking from experience.
But there's no way to avoid it. I mean, leaving the cap where it is doesn't stop it grinding you down. I mean, it's hard work if you've got a family member who's in a home. Yeah. It's just hard work, full stop, isn't it?
But the fundamental question is, why should you pay for health care when you're old and you get the same thing?
Because it's not seen as healthcare, is it?
No, we're not. We are talking about people being spoon-fed and having the bottoms wiped. To be graphic about it, of course. But we're also talking about having medicines administered to you. So to get a medication, before she was in the care home, my mum was paying £18 an hour for people to come in and simply give her pills. You know, why? No,
I totally understand your point that if you had cancer, you would be looked after by the NHS.
Yeah.
But if you've got dementia,
or you're just old.
Or just old. Yes, you're expected to pay for your social care.
But then we're also saying the NHS is a bottomless pit.
Well, this always goes back to this. This does feel, actually, when you see it, particularly like a paper like the Express running with it as the front page, like politically potentially pretty toxic for the government.
It really is, isn't it? Let's move on to children. This is according to teachers. Basically, our nation's children are going to school hungry.
This is a really, really interesting in terms of how you judge it. So these are, if teachers, and like, you can be quite sceptical of these when you see these kind of testimonies come out. If teachers, who are obviously on the front line of this, are seeing kids who are not eligible for free school meals coming in, and they are shocked and dismayed by what they are coming in, you know, mouldy bread and dry cereal and sometimes nothing at all. It's really interesting, this issue, because there'll be parts of the country and people in the country who go, what happened to personal responsibility here? Is this, you know, of course the Guardian are kind of, there's a call to action thing happening here. What about personal responsibility? Why is the government all of a sudden responsible for, you know, and I think you guys just very briefly touched on it in terms of the prices of like maybe like home, own brand bread and all that kind of stuff. However, I think that politically it's almost not worth having that fight. And I think the idea, when we talk about the cost of living crisis and just all the headaches that families are going through, the idea that young people are going into schools and they're not being fed, and if that is due to the cost of living crisis and teachers are seeing that, I think you have to take it on face value.
Do you believe that children are going to school with sandwiches made with mouldy bread? Do you believe that's the cost of living crisis, or is it just bad parenting?
Well, this is exactly what I'm saying, and it's kind of purely politically. If it does kind of, I mean, we saw the free school meal debate a few summers ago, and just how toxic that was for the government, that they had that fight and then they made a U-turn on it. If this does build momentum, and I'm sure there'll be campaigning organisations that are very much behind that, for me, it's just not a fight worth having, because it is so emotive to people, and if there is extra support that can happen, or, you know, like. I actually think, it's not very me always, but I actually think the government should maybe perhaps find a way to support people if this movement does gain momentum.
The only way to make sure, though, that if a government to fill children's tummies is to actually provide a breakfast at school or something like that.
My parents were both teachers, and I met children that they had identified as being very, very deprived and neglected. There was one child I remember that my mum was, you won't be able to do it now, but she brought this child home to play and get fed, and she was about 4, but she looked about 2. She was so underdeveloped. And I remember suggesting, you know, maybe we could foster her, or, you know, teachers have always been confronted by abject poverty. I don't believe, I'd like to see the statistics about just how many kids are coming with mouldy bread sandwiches.
I mean, it sounds like a one-off.
It sounds like a one-off to me.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, and they're pinning the whole thing on it. But, you know, I'm not unsympathetic. It's heartbreaking if a child is sent to school like that. But, you know, I buy bread now. You know, I'm a bit tight.
You are tight.
And I buy...
Course, it's terrible.
I was in... you know,
I saw your sandwiches you made.
Yeah, see, I made my sandwiches.
Yeah, fair.
That loaf was something like 30p.
Yeah.
30p?
Yeah, and what was Budgeons in Stony Stratford, it's now Cork, changing over. But they've just by where you go and pay for your wine, they've got... I'm being honest, when I pop in for a bottle of wine, they've got a whole thing, you know, reduced, and I'm always buying bread. You know,
I completely get. I just think from the government's perspective, it is on the in tray that the Prime Minister has at the moment. It's probably quite far down, but it should be one to watch because of just how emotive it is to people, rightly or wrongly.
If children are going hungry and if children are going to school with that sort of thing to eat, it's disgusting, and we should be taking care of them as a nation, if not by their own home, if the parents got. But I don't believe that story. As it is.
No. Can we have a look at, because this is interesting, in the Telegraph, Oscar, looking at the G20 to give peace a chance with Russia and Ukraine, because now if something there was solved, that actually is going to affect the global community, isn't it, economically?
Yes. And I know, you know, all the issues that we talk about on this show in terms of like the really in-your-face kind of immediate challenges that people are suffering in their day-to-day life is by and large attached to inflation, the economy, all that kind of stuff. But you have to remember that there is a war happening on our continent, and it doesn't make you a bad person that you kind of forget that, because of these upfront costs that you're having in your country at the moment. And I think the G20 summit is a really, we'd hope, promising, or at least very important opportunity to slightly put it back on the agenda again and see if we can make some progress. And it's a big opportunity.
Putin's apparently going to do it by Zoom. He's not actually going himself, he's doing it down the line.
To be fair, I don't blame him.
No, I don't.
No,
but why would the US be saying to the Ukraine, give peace a chance? That's what they want. They're fighting for peace, aren't they?
No, of course. And actually, I think the conversation that Rishi has been having with Zelensky is very interesting, and watching that relationship build, because, and of course I'm going to say this, but Boris and Zelensky's relationship and the work that Boris did on the war in Ukraine is, and I've said this before, if Ukraine wins and the returns to being a peaceful country, I think what Boris did will be remembered for generations, and I think Rishi is very much on board, and the messaging feels very similar to Boris, and it's a continuation, which is very, very promising. And I think the G20 summit is a really good opportunity for Rishi, actually, to really kind of kick that on. And I know we have our own problems in this country, and it's easy to forget, but it is linked. It is all interlinked.
It is all linked, yeah. Look, we've got 90 seconds, Liz, to talk about deporting Albanians.
Okay, well, this is just a small article on the inside of the Times front page, page 2, headline, 22 Albanians on deportation flight. They were interviewed and immediately selected to be sent straight back from Manston in Kent. The centre housing them. They returned to Albania and were taken to a police station which has been funded by the UK government. They've now been banned from the Schengen area for 3 years, which is a really good move, because if you can't get a plane from Albania to, say, Amsterdam or Paris and then cross to the Channel coast, if you're not even allowed to board a plane into the Schengen area, it's a good start. And I wanted to highlight it because I thought a lot of our viewers will be interested in that, and it seems to have slipped under the radar.
Yeah, it does. It's an interesting move. Perhaps it's the way of things. We're going to actually pull our finger out and get on with it.
Only 22 so far. There are thousands of Albanians here.
Out of 12,000 Albanians so far this year.
But it is a start, maybe.
As GJ said, it's a moving in the right direction, mate.
I'm all looking at it. Liz, also, we've got to leave it there, but thank you both very much indeed.